welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio.
And we are back with another amazing episode. This one's extra amazing because I am, for the first time, having a guest on that I've been wanting to have onto the show for a long, long time. This guy, let me just tease you for a second and say he's the real world Indiana Jones, if Indiana Jones actually did Bigfoot research too. Ooh. Meanwhile, want to do some quick shout outs before we get to our guest and to several of my friends, one of which is Ollie in Ireland, Wildman in Scotland, Natasha in Russia, Igor B in Russia, Wolfgang in Austria, Sherry in Australia. Hey, Sherry, miss ya. Get a hold of me. Bigfoot in Germany, who's now back in the U.S. in Nevada and is going to be on the show here shortly again, and Orger Mark, who's here much closer to where I am at an Ogre. Mark is also going to be on the show here shortly for the first time ever. So let me also remind you that if you need to contact me concerning Bigfoot related or other cryptid related issues, you can get in touch with me at worldbigfootcentral@yahoo.com. If you're looking for swag, and I got a big swag store, get over to Teespring, teespring.com/stores/world-bigfoot-central. And of course, this show is 100% demonetized and otherwise shunned by the overlords at YouTube. And so we need your help to keep bringing you shows. If you can afford to help, please do so. PayPal.me/world-bigfoot-central. And with that out of the way, let me give you a quick rundown on our guest. Like I teased earlier, this guy is like Mr. Archaeology, amazing exploits, only real world. And along the way, he ran into the phenomenon of the Bigfoot Sasquatch thing too, which may or may not have helped with his other pursuits. But I'm sure many of you already know who this guy is that I've been teasing you, who it is about to be on the show. I heavily recommend you go over to his YouTube channel, KRYDER Explorations. And with that, welcome to the show, Robert Crider. So great to have you on the show finally, brother. I've been trying to get you tracked down and get you on here for a long time because, you know, not only am I a longtime fan and viewer of your content, because, you know, there's like not a lot of competition between all the legit researchers out there. There's a whole lot of Bigfoot channels, but there's not a lot of competition between the legit ones because there aren't very many. Just my opinion. But I've always known that Robert ain't full of crap. He's got the evidence to back it up. He knows exactly what he's talking about. And it behooves you, there's a big word, to listen to what he has to say and to digest it thoroughly, because he ain't talking crap about anything that he has to talk about. And he can back up 99% of it with video, audio, and other evidence. And so welcome for the first time to the show, buddy. I know I already said that, but woohoo, glad to have you here.
No, it's my pleasure. It's a privilege, Brian, or Duke. I really feel privileged to be here. You've been shooting at me for quite a while now, and I've been putting you off and putting you off. I just kind of tried to run everybody in line. And, you know, after Michigan, man, I was so far back, and then we got down with a little bit of illness and whatnot and had to come back up from that. But yeah, I'm glad to finally be here.
I heard about Michigan too. And by the way, one of the people you ran into there, Robin McRae, very briefly, said, "Oh, he's just a sweetheart. Say hi to him the next time you get a chance to."
Okay.
So there's your official
hi
for Robin McRae.
Nice.
She thought you were just a sweetie. And that woman knows a hell of a lot about the Sasquatch subject, but not to diverge onto that. We're here to talk about you. So it's pretty well known that you are like Mr. Field Archaeology and finding treasures and doing the stuff with the petroglyphs and all the kind of weird markers they have over there in the Southwest. Mm-hmm. And then at some point you found out the Sasquatch thing was going on. How did all that happen?
Well, I had an interest early, naturally. We had ventured up into northern reaches of Canada and stuff ever since I was like 4 years old. And well, speaking of that, yeah, my mom passed away not too many years ago, and one of the things she left me was this deal here. I'll show you. And it's
cute.
Yeah, and so it started way back when. This is a hand carved by Rain. It's a Native American up there in the Pacific Northwest, and it's interesting because it's got blue-green eyes, and this is early on. You know, this is in the what was the 1969. So, but so I always had a basic interest, and then getting into the weird and unusual, stemmed from being a child and being into that kind of stuff, seeing In Search of Bigfoot, stuff like that. And it went up. And I realized we weren't being taught the truth in school about so many subjects, including the Bigfoot or Sasquatch enigma. And as I got older and older, we're learning less and less. These things should be coming up by now in history and these other courses in biology, and these truths now, not even a hint of them ever did, And so it led, collectively, it led me into a life of looking for those answers myself and doing what I could as a human being, which was basically put a lot of feet on the ground. I used to do about 100 miles a week on foot in the Arizona desert, New Mexico deserts, and even Colorado and other areas. And so you learn that way, and then I worked as a guide for a while, and as a guide, and being out there that much, you hold a different type of position, and so you're getting stories and you're seeing things, and you have to keep your head together, and you got to look at everything in a rational point of view, but as it went down the line, I got into the treasure thing through the historical and through the heavy exploration and finds we had made. It wasn't like it was an idea I had and then went into, I'll get a metal detector and I'll go out and find me some treasure. It was never ever like that. It was the other way around exactly. It was like we just kept finding these things and then figuring out what the hell are we finding, and they led us to truths. And eventually, just through the years of doing the heavy exploration, once it got more geared to where we knew what we were doing historically, and we began to do it with more methodology and a tactful way, we also began to encounter, more at random in that sense, the Bigfoot creatures, and because they're out there, and if you're out there enough, and especially in the hidden places, the secret canyons and the box canyons and the high ground where people can't get to, and the hidden valleys and things like that are often where ancient peoples, chose to make special locations or things were the hardest places to get to. And so they kind of congealed, they kind of went together. And it led to a lot of experiences. And then make a long story short, in 2010, I would say we've been on YouTube even since 2008, but in 2010, I really started seeing a lot of Bigfoot stuff that came up, and I expected to see better. And it was being flooded with Bigfoot's Bigfoot's eating ice cream on an ATV and all kinds of just crazy crap. And then when I saw a lot of the people who really wanted to find a truth, they were already applying so much supposition. It was going so many ways. And we thought, well, we had a truth already that had been dictated on its own, through the years of us doing work. And plus we're researchers. So when we see things, we tend to look at them differently than other people do. And there was just a factual truth here. And it seemed like that was being lost even in 2010. It wasn't going down that aisle. And so we jumped on board and put out a video that I had shot in '94, one up on a ridge line, and it just kind of went from there.
Right on. So interesting. Now, one of the things I follow is strictly a Bigfoot researcher, but also interested in the ancient alternate history, archaeology, all that kind of stuff that you're into. Another reason I like your channel and stuff a lot. Tend to have a lot of overlap and interesting things that we both share mutual interest. But do you find that there's, and this is kind of like going to be hard to actually classify because right, you're out there because you're looking for signs of ancient structures, for megaliths, for where people used to have, where there's ruins, people used to live there, things like that. So you tend to be around those areas looking for them. But do you find that if you're just like randomly going through an area, is there as much Sasquatch sign randomly as there is around those areas?
Let's see. No, I'd have to say no, because almost all the times that you have this type of historical activity that we focus on, which is usually the more enigmatic, they're almost always going to be in protected locations. Now, there are defining factors in that, whether there's human habitation close by these locations or whether the environment's far different now than it was at that time. Then maybe not. So if we're near Show Low, Arizona and doing the canyons there, no, we don't see their sign there, but that's because the environment and topography there's not coherent.
It's completely unlivable at this point.
It's not livable really. And if it is in a transient nature. It's nowhere you can stick a family unit or anything like that or propagate. And so when we have factors like that, of course, we don't see their activity, but we do. we do see them somewhat together, in as much as there seems to have been an early connection between some beings, let's say, and then Native American or human presence and the Sasquatch presence very early on, maybe 8 or 10,000 years ago. All of them, some form or another, interconnected. But we do see that through evidence and in monumentation. So we'd often see big, even before we made the association, we would often see big ape or gorilla looking, what they are as Bigfoot heads, along with the native heads and then other type entities as well. And these are things that are repeated in the stone over and over and over, and you see those same characteristics. So we always knew there was a connection, but we didn't go too deep on the rabbit hole to what that connection might be. We just let it kind of speak for itself. And but I will say that we see a lot of Bigfoot sign where there is no other historical sign, and we see a lot of historical sign where there's no Bigfoot sign. But it's not uncommon for those two to be related because of the topography and the environment. And as well, ancient Spain talked about big black beasts, and that they would often conceal their stuff or their caches in areas where they occupied, because they would naturally keep those people away or keep people out of those areas. So
interesting. Well, up here, there hasn't been a whole lot of change ecologically for a long time. Mm-hmm. And even more modern things, abandoned ghost towns and mines and stuff like that, especially the gold mines because of the quartz, there's Bigfoot presence around them. You can go camp in a ghost town, there's going to be Bigfoot there. You can virtually guarantee it. And given the choice of, you got an 80-mile long mountain range that's got tons of places for you to live, why are you clustering here?
Right.
That's what we keep running into. Quartz deposits, abandoned mines, abandoned ghost towns. There's things, I've told you about already on the phone that we found that look a lot like megaliths. We haven't been able to prove anything yet, but, and they were there. We weren't even looking for them. We went to go check out the megaliths, and we got 3 of them on video.
Right. Well, I mean, they occupy or move across just about everywhere they can. And, that's what we've seen. There's different population densities in different areas. And there's so many factors for that, most of them make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what doesn't make sense to me is the connection to these ancient ruins, left by humans and or otherwise. Because even, like I said, even more recent ones like ghost towns from 100 years ago, they're hanging around them all the time. Why?
Right. Yeah.
It's not a shelter issue. Most of the buildings don't have a roof or anything. Why hang around?
Yeah, and then you see what subjects are hanging around there. Is it because they hang in different age groups pretty frequently, just like we do. And so who is it that's messing around? Is it your adolescents or your young adults, or is it the big matures, or
well, I'll give you an example. We've been canvassing a ghost town up here called Coloma, which is about 4 miles from one of the most well-known ghost towns in the West, Garnett, which the Park Service keeps up and uses for a tourist trap. This one was actually bigger. It had over 80 buildings in it. It's about 4 miles away. They know nothing about it, and it's completely abandoned. People occasionally camp there, but not a whole lot.
Right.
And during the summer, especially if you go in the spring or later in the fall, the Sasquatch presence there is really heavy. But during the midsummer, when people are randomly camping there, they're not really around that much. But especially during the fall, because there's berries all over the place, they're taking advantage of that. And then you find tracks all over the place. If you're there, you're hearing them. They're doing wood knocks. They're all over.
Well, if there was cleared ground and disturbed earth to where places like berries and things like that would be prolific, I could definitely see that would be an attraction as well. And that tends to happen around old human habitation where everything's been disturbed at one time or another, Yeah. Other than that, it's a curiosity. It's a place to go hang out, especially if it's, subjects in the later adolescence or the young adults. We've seen a lot of activity like that where they'll have those age groups hanging around bridges and on the peripheries of towns. And, we catch them in the parking lot and the lights and stuff like that, or raiding dumpsters, or, so they tend to be a lot more, how would I say, boisterous about getting into human stuff, whether it be, like you said, a ghost town or whatever. Those are all curiosities outside their normal trip. So,
Yeah.
I could kind of understand it. You know, the only way to control that would be spend equal time in a certain radius around that area, not
Yep.
in the ghost town, and see what
Yep.
type of activity you had.
Yep. We've
Chances
tried
are,
that, and
yeah,
it's virtually nothing.
yeah,
They cluster around that area for some reason. If you go
might be,
further away from it, you find no structures, no tracks, no
yeah,
presence, no activity.
it might be a place that they're familiar with, and that's where they have their human interaction. So,
It
or
could be, and there
whatever.
could be another factor, which is there's two very mysterious looking standing stones right next to it,
Hmm.
which we took some interesting gear up there and got a couple of gamma ray bursts standing right in between them, which should be impossible, but it happened. We also then had paranormal team up there 2 summers in a row camping out, getting EVPs and all kinds of stuff. The place is haunted as crap, according to them. But is that them or somebody else messing with them?
Right, right,
One of them
right,
accidentally caught a Sasquatch on video peeking down behind a hillside as he was panning around with his camera.
right.
So
Yeah,
there's like, again, this is one of those things where it's like where you find this heavy duty Sasquatch presence a lot of time. There's sometimes a lot of other cryptid activity and or supposed ghost activity going on there, and we've started to see a correlation between that and what people are thinking are like stationary portals and stuff too, because there's so much activity. And down in the Southwest, from what the Navajo have told me, they would mark those areas by putting a spiral on a rock. There's a portal here, and then sometimes they even put the little graphic on there of what things might be coming through the portal that you should be avoiding to make it extra clear. There's a permanent portal here. These bad things come through it. Might
right.
not want to hang around here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's pretty interesting actually.
Well, yeah, well, we've been wondering about that. And the other thing is that when last summer I was up there with a friend of mine who's been on the show before that does Bigfoot stuff up in Alaska, and we had just gone past that area with the uprights and were trailing off into the woods toward where I knew they had a whole bunch of ancient structures, and I mean Sasquatch structures, tree structures that they had built a long time ago. Because all this stuff is old and gray, hasn't been touched or moved. It's probably been sitting there for decades,
Right.
just in the woods right next to the abandoned town, right? So we're making a beeline from the upright stones over to this area, and we get to the top of the ridge, and she gets this weird feeling something's watching her, so she turns around, takes a picture with her cell phone, and then she takes a couple of pictures down the hill. Well, one of those we found one way up on the next ridge line, peeking around the tree, watching us. And right then she felt like got sick, sat down on a stump and couldn't hardly move. Something happened to her. And then I got her back on her feet again and got her back to the vehicle. And as soon as we got back to the vehicle, she looked at the pictures on her cell phone. And one of them shows an object bending the light around it. And in the background behind that, there's a clear Sasquatch head peeking around a tree looking at her. And this is what she had the feeling something was watching her, turned around and took the picture. That's what she got. So
Wow.
again, this place very, very strange.
Why was there a town there?
It was a gold mine at one time. That was why all the towns were out there. There was 3 gold mines there. 2 of them were on top of the mountain.
Now, see, when you get this gold in particular, then yeah, we see everything.
Quartz.
So we see presence, well, in gold itself, just in caches where there's not even a mineral vein at all, and you could have a large cache of gold somewhere,
Right.
and you still have the presence of off-world entities, spirits, demons, Sasquatch, everybody, little people, everybody. For some reason, gold is a defining factor on a lot of that stuff. So that's why I kind of asked. It's like, so when we have all these things happening at a location, it's probably not because the town was there, because the towns don't attract things like that all by themselves.
Right.
We just say, why was the town there? And then how long has that been an interest to humans and other beings and been too much of a focal point? So talk about energy being installed in a location when, I don't know if you ever heard about like gold fever, but I mean,
Yep.
people, it gets so intense, it gets beyond human capacity for logic and emotion and even action, and the resulting energies that surround a location like that can be pretty off the charts. So good, bad, and
Well,
sideways.
yeah, look at the long-term human connection with gold. And if you go back 5,000 years and you trust that Sitchin made
Or
an
more.
accurate translation of it, the Anunnaki supposedly were here to mine the gold off the planet. So,
Yeah.
going back at least that far. The other thing with the page that we're on with it is that gold, that means there's quartz. Where there's gold, there's quartz, and it's
Yeah.
usually granite.
Not
And that's
always, but yeah.
not always, but usually. And that also means in those cases it's piezoelectric going on. And we've noticed not so much a connection between gold and Sasquatch as quartz and Sasquatch. As we've found straight up like a huge 60-foot X structure made out of 2 entire lodgepole pines that they had moved into place, about 3 tons each. And on the canyon wall behind it, which is straight up rock, there's about a 4-foot wide and 7-foot high vein of quartz right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, if
And we see this over and over and over again, all the places they have heavy traffic in, you'll find big chunks of quartz.
Imagine, so in ancient times, so our whole continent, the North American continent, was completely mined all the way from the Canadian border at the Pacific Northwest, all the way to New York, all the way to down south. So, and in the Southwest, it just continued through South America. But the mines just weren't like Aztec. They go back 8,000 or 10,000 years and even more, and everywhere was mined. And so when we talk about things like quartz vein structures, anytime that a human being over the last so many thousand years witnessed a 4-foot wide quartz structure, you'd sink a shaft on it somewhere. Mm-hmm. And because in the way that, if you read like D. Ray Metallica 1541, their understanding of mineral veins and what it was, so that would be considered a vena profunda. And anytime that you saw something like that, there's going to be some form or another metal body below the quartz. Mm-hmm. And they know this. So the likelihood of having early tunneling chambers, massive stoping and stuff like that, even the hollowing out of mountains in prehistory, these are places we don't know about today that are being found. I mean, but what I mean to say is, so if you have a region that's prolific in vein quartz and large vena profunda like that, then you're probably going to have a massive 8,000-year-old history of mining that material and opening openings. And if you have a creature like Bigfoot that might take advantage of mines and underground workings and everything else for shelter travel or whatever, then that might be a cross link between those two things. I know that we always want to go to the energy realm and things like that, but we've seen, well, just through my research anyway, we've seen too much correlation between the simple things generally, that they don't have to go too far out of the whack. So like, and we map fields and stuff and do all these registers all the time anyway. And so we see, like, we don't,
let me cut you off for a second. Have you seen examples of them manipulating or using pieces of quartz? Because we have.
Not
collecting
much.
them up, moving them around,
setting them on rocks.
Of it.
I've seen, well, we've always seen dissimilar things collected and placed. And so even where they're fresh, we go in and then on the way back out, they're set up and stuff. And sometimes it might be because that's perceived, probably that might be what we like to look at. But as well, but I mean, the same, I tell people a lot about it, but sat balls. So we've seen them roll up sat balls and set them the same way they'll set rocks or a few feathers or a few, so different items. I've even seen one, an ivory eye that was cut and polished, and it's probably oriental, it's probably really ancient, but it was gifted to a guy from somewhere. So it was something that the person, I guess the subject perceived the person would want or the person would like. And so who knows, but yeah, we've seen them collect quartz rocks where they're dissimilar from the surrounding terrain.
Yeah, they decided to give us a bunch of quartz rocks for some reason this spring, and we never gifted them anything. We're just up there for years and years and years. And all of a sudden there's this big pile of rocks right next to where I always park my vehicle. And I'm like, why the hell would anybody go to all the trouble of finding all these quartz rocks that have this peculiar orange outside look on them and put them in a big pile and not take them with them?
Nice.
That doesn't make any damn sense.
Were they rough?
I just left them there. Yeah, no, a couple of them were broken open, but most of them just had this weird kind of orange color on the outside of them.
I mean,
there was about half a bag full of them. Everything from like this size to this size.
Were they fractured and fragmented, or were they,
No, most of them were intact. There was a couple of them that were broken. The rest of them were just intact. You had to break them open to tell what the hell was on the inside.
Right.
So I paid no attention to it. I figured somebody was gathering up rocks and just left them there. Okay. So the next time we showed up, there's another one of those rocks that's right where I put my tent that wasn't there the time before. Nobody had been there in between. No evidence of campfire use. So I got onto the river where I always put the stuff in the river to keep it cold. There's another one. It's about the size of a baseball right there. Well, that didn't just get pushed in by the no water flow over the last month. Where the hell did this come from? So I grabbed both of those and I put them together and went, well, I think these guys are leaving these things here for me. And then last time we were up there, we gathered up the whole pile, and I had a couple of friends up there with me, and I said, you guys just pick up whichever ones you want. Apparently they were left here as gifts for us. And then I have a psychic that I know that can actually communicate with them, and she's verified that's exactly what they were. They were leaving us presents. They thought we like quartz rocks for some reason.
Yeah, well, it's a dissimilar. Anything dissimilar, even in our world, is valuable, and so because it's special because there's less of them.
Yeah, and so, these aren't common though, because that's another thing. We've been around this area for years and years and years. And like, if you walked around the river for 20 minutes, you might find one. Right. They got a pile that'll fill up half a bag,
Yeah, they're special. You bet. Yeah. That's exactly how we've seen the same thing. So, but sap balls are a little different. They're a useful item. And so that's the only thing I've seen them covet or tote from one place to another, really, is just sap balls. And then they'll trade those to us for stupid stuff. Like they took a cat one time of ours and they left sap balls. And,
it probably seemed like an equitable trade.
I had
another researcher tell me the sap ball things are like their version of chewing gum.
Well, the whole thing is, so I don't know if they might have got that from us or not, but so where that comes from is that's what we determined in our research. They were probably being chewed for hygiene. And where that determination was made was through study of a lot of cliff dwellings and ancient Native American ruins and stuff. I used to find yucca fiber that was tied in knots, and then it would dipped in pitch or sap until it was a ball. And then we've found them chewed up. So they would chew those up, and it's like flossing and Listerine basically at the same time, and a vitamin C source. So we assumed, because the way they covet them and the way they're using them, especially like we noticed that each time we ever kind of discovered those, they were somewhat attributed to a family unit or an older individual. And so, what it does is it clears of infection, it conquers tooth pain and this other stuff, which is super important. I mean, that's what usually kills like an adult chipper or chimper and gorilla in the wild is tooth decay and dental issues. So it's extremely important part of a natural system. If you were going to be there, you need something to play that role. And so that's why we thought, wow, these are probably, they treat them like they're coveted. They treat them like they're special. And so yeah, they do chew them. I mean, but if you ever picked it, depending on what kind of pitch it is, but if you ever picked one up and chew them, they can be pretty stout. It's like it's like Listerine, man. So especially spruce and cedar, that both of those are real rich. So we do. I take little bits and just use that same, but it's tiny amounts, and use that when we camp or hike or whatever for oral hygiene myself now. So
right on. That's, like I said, I had somebody else, actually they're over on the East Coast, that told me the same thing. So it's interesting to get the verification from you that you guys are on the same page and you think that's what they're doing with them too. And it wouldn't surprise me at all. It makes perfect sense, actually. Again, logical reason to do it. Have you found any examples of them? You crawl around in caves and stuff, of them caching food? Because I know that's been found a few times. There was one person that found a little piece of a cave wall crumbled, and they looked, and there was a hole in there, and they reached into the hole and pulled it out, and there was a dried up mouse wrapped in a leaf. So they started playing around with the wall of the cave. There was a whole ton of them in there. Somebody had cached all these little field mice wrapped in a leaf and then just buried with mud on the edge of it. Like, what the hell does that?
I've not found any sealed up with mud, but we found one that was I found food caches. One in particular was real cool because you could see in a rock face under some trees on a steep slope, and you'll have like a little vertical rock face. There'll be a flat spot you can kind of stop and rest or whatever. So we were in a spot like that, in that little rock face. Maybe it was 6 foot high or something. Was there, and there was a rock that had obviously, I believe this was granite, and it was decomposed granite and eroded granite. And so there was a piece that obviously it looked like it had been taken out and put back in. And it was, it was like those polygonal walls type of erosion.
Oh, okay.
And then we pulled it out. And the reason it didn't fit all the way back in was because the whole back of it behind it was stuffed with pinon pine nuts.
Wow.
And none of them were decayed or dirty or anything. It was really cool. They were all totally clean. Nothing else was in there with them. And then, but no mouse or anything could have even gotten in. The seam and the crack was too small. So nothing could even get in there. And that was really cool because you knew, positively, so something slid that rock out, stuffed them full, and then slid the rock back in.
Well, again, that's interesting because it's, you've only got really two options. It's either going to be a human or a Sasquatch. It's got to have some of the opposable thumb hands and that much brain power to go, well, I can stash this in here in this nice cold underground place and it'll stay all yummy for me.
Yeah, and that chunk probably weighed a good 15, 18 pounds.
Oh, God.
Because that chunk was about 10 inches tall, maybe 8 or 10 inches wide, and about 8 or 10 inches deep. And that's a chunk of granite. So it had considerable, it was shaped straight, kind of trapezoidal. It was shaped a little funny. So it wasn't like a cube, but still, it had quite a bit of weight to it. So like a raccoon or something like that isn't going to pry that rock out of there, basically, or dig it out.
But would a raccoon be clever enough to put it back into place, even if they had the strength to do it? That's the real question.
Well, and whatever put it there obviously was keeping it in a place where an animal like a raccoon or maybe even a bear couldn't get the rock out.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't a way to pry or anything the rock out. You couldn't have put a screwdriver in the crack and then pry because it just would have wedged itself in. You had to wiggle it and slide it straight back out. So yeah, maybe a bear could have got it with both paws in there and the nails in and wiggled it out real careful, maybe. But I mean, obviously whatever put it in there was safeguarding it from animals that weren't going to be able to do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
and in those conditions, it makes you wonder how long it was actually sitting there, because something like that could sit there a long time and still be fairly decent.
Yeah, pinon nuts will last years. They've been there 10 years.
Yeah. Somebody's got a little food stash. Oh, this has been, actually had a few people down in Tennessee, Kentucky area that have found this stuff in caves down there, where there's like, what the hell's going on? Who's stashing food in here? And this is a really weird way to do it. And,
Yeah.
Very strange stuff. How much evidence have you found? I know you go lots of underground stuff. Have you ever found any Sasquatch tracks in any of the undergrounds or anything you've been in?
Not deep, no. I mean, in the openings and things, and under overhangs, a lot. A lot of things what people would call caves, which are fracture zones or blowouts, but never deep. They'll create a sheltered space, a few feet in or behind an overhang where the front of the cliff's fallen down. You'll end up with an 8-foot wide crack behind it, something like a cliff face or something like that. Yeah, we found evidence and sign in those, but never deep. No, it really depends on the region. I think a cave is a neat shelter, but it's also one of the finest traps. So
I think it has a lot to do with, is there one or more entrances?
Absolutely.
If there's only one, they're not going to be living in it.
Not many animals live in burrows with only one way in.
Yeah.
And, rabbits do occasionally. Often they'll have a second route in, but often that they're down, like jackrabbits and things like that, they just make one burrow and it goes real deep, like 6-7 feet deep, anywhere from 4 to 6, 7 feet deep. And so, but most animals have a back door or they won't go in the hole. They don't,
Right. And you got to think how smart and tactical Sasquatch are. Are they going to make a rookie mistake like that? Are you freaking kidding me?
Exactly. They might check a cave or something like that, go in, check one and bolt, no problem. But to be caught somewhere, that's not,
no. And that's, again, that makes sense with what you're saying. They would stay near the entrance in case something came nearby. There's only one way in and out. I got to exit here before they trap me in this cave.
Exactly. And how easy is that, basically? Just they're going to pick up on you coming quarter mile, half mile away and just step around from the front and they're not in it anymore. And you pass by, they go back in the shelter if they want. Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
And we've seen a lot of food remnant, stuff like that brought into not just caves, but up against rock bluffs where there's just big rock, or some form of, I wouldn't even say shelter, but obstruction at least. something that gives a little bit of privacy, and they'll reuse those spots over and over.
Have you found any of the evidence of them having dinner? And some of the researchers have pointed this out, where they'll catch a bird or something, and all the feathers will be plucked out in a neat little pile, or all the bones after the meal are all kind of laying in a neat little pile, and you're like, regular animals don't do that.
Yeah. Actually, I was looking through a file this evening that I haven't got, or not, I will have, but it never got actually entered into the archive register, so it's still in an intermediate file, and there's a couple hundred pictures in there, and I was looking through those, and some of what's in there is exactly what you just described. So there's many times we find pluck piles, so where a subject has sat down and plucked all the feathers out of a bird and put them in one little pile, and we've seen that dozens of times, and so we have a lot of photographic evidence of that. And then with other corroborating evidence, we even found where they went into a woodpecker hole and put 2 fingers in the hole and popped the side of the tree out, got the woodpecker, and then went down just a little short ways and sat down, and then plucked the bird. And then as well, then I was looking today in that same file was a kill, what we call kill zones or whatever, but they're food consumption sites for large animals. So they'll often take large animals to safe food consumption sites where they're not going to get bothered or messed with to do larger feeding. And so, so one of those was in there, and there was parts of, I think, 3 different cattle and a horse. And so this is large stuff, and it's domestic stuff that they're taking into there. And there was, all kinds of evidence laying there. Matter of fact, there's even evidence on one piece of cutting, and which is really interesting, because we always see similar evidence when we have large food remnant cow bones and things. They'll crack the large leg bones for the marrow.
Get the marrow, yeah.
They'll bite off the cartilage on the knuckles, and they'll leave big teeth imprints, but there won't be any other mark on the bone, none. They'll scrape it right to bone with their fingernails or however they strip it, but there won't be another mark on it. And then on this one leg, it's an entire cow leg from the hoof to the shoulder. And they bit off the top of the edge of the shoulder blade there. They just bit that whole edge off. And then down lower on the leg, there's actually a few cut marks. And that's really super interesting, because what we've seen them do in goats is bleed the goats out. So we've seen them puncture the femoral and carotid artery and then drain the goat and not even eat it, not even take it. And then what's interesting about this is the location of the leg is similar to that. So to potentially that they did the same thing, they bloodlet that animal before they took it out, because it's only one small zone in the leg has a couple of little cut marks on it, and which is really off the wall for us to find those. So,
wow. Well, make sure you include some of those pictures of those neat little bone and feather piles so we can show everybody here.
No problem.
That's that's one of the things that most people don't even notice or think to look for. If you have something like that sitting there, and there's like, well, where's the evidence of the hunter that did this?
Right.
Why, if he's plucking the bird and stuff, where's the campfire?
Yeah. And we've got, like, in that same file, that same day or that same series of days when we did that expedition, there's one where we're tracking a coyote, and until it gets grabbed, picked up, and then drug away. And the coyote, you can tell the coyote's still alive while it's being drug off. He's only got 2 feet that are touching, but he's fighting for a long ways. And then pretty soon he's not really fighting anymore. He's still dragging, but then so and then we've seen quite a bit deer the same way. So you got deer tracks walking in a sand bed, and then from the side, all of a sudden they're just picked up, and you see all the scrape marks, and the deer go crazy and then just gone. And that's them snatching them up. So we've got, we see an awful lot through the tracks. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I got one interesting report from former roommate of mine up here, whose family used to be heavily involved in forestry in the area. And he is, Mr. Outdoors. He grew up here in Montana. He's out there prospecting, and he's got his metal detector, and he's hunting and fishing and picking mushrooms and berries. And one day he's out there picking mushrooms, and he smells this. What the hell is this weird smell? Something smells terrible. So, of course, he's curious. He follows his nose toward the smell, and he didn't realize he had walked onto somebody's private property. It wasn't marked. And there's a cave over there. So now he's like really curious. The smell's coming from the cave. It smells like something dead. So he walks over and he has more more courage and common sense like me. So he goes and peeks around the corner of the cave, and inside the cave there's uh, uh, two dead mountain lions and a dead wolf, and they're squashed like pancakes, and they're in a pile like pancakes. And he goes in a little bit and takes a look at them a little closer because he's going to report it to forestry. One of his relatives works for him. There ain't a puncture mark or anything on them. Something squashed them and threw them in a pile in this cave. Maybe somebody trying to get rid of competitive predators in their area or threats to their young. But yeah, he had to go report it. He found out who owned the property and went, "Do you know anything about this cave back here?" And they're like, "What? There's a cave on my property?" Yeah, I found some dead predators there. I'm gonna have to report it. And I know you probably didn't do anything because ain't no puncture wounds or bullet wounds or anything on them, you know. And if somebody poisoned them, they smashed them flat afterwards and then threw them in the cave. So.
Yeah, probably dusting predators. That's probably what it was too.
So
well,
yep.
I know when the males get a little crazy. I know when there's been a birth, and they'll tend to kill everything they perceive as a threat that's anywhere near the area. So.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we found in our favorite research area there. After 5 or 6 years of being in there, we've never found a bear track. We've never found a mountain lion track.
Right.
And there's so many prey animal tracks, Robert, you can barely take a step on the ground without stepping on one of them. You got bighorn sheep, mountain goats, moose, elk, 3 different kinds of deer. Their tracks are everywhere. Not a predator. Nope.
Right.
Tons of Sasquatch tracks, but no predators.
And like I was telling you, I think we talked earlier, and I was telling you the other day where we had found a juvenile, actually a very small juvenile's prints and mountain lion prints. And they were together, and which one was following the other or whether they were together or whatever the story was, who knows, but they were on the same pathway, and no tracks of any larger subjects or individuals, just this real small subject and mountain lion tracks, which is
God,
really
I wish
crazy.
you would have gotten an overlapping track so we would have known what order they were walking.
Yeah, and we never did find. We found 6 or 7 of each, and we never did find where they had never stepped on each other. But they were in a lot of these desert regions. You know, everything off a 6 or 8 inch wide dirt track is, you know, will bite or stick or cut you or whatever. And so they were right on the same track. They just never did cross each other.
Huh.
Or never on top of each other, I should say. So
yeah. For all we know, it could have just been random. They're both going down the same trail at different times. So it's hard to know. It would be interesting if they were actually together, though. You know, if they weren't, which is following the other.
Yeah. Is a big cat stalking this little Sasquatch guy, or right, exactly, or is this when they raised
curious and he's like, I'm gonna sneak up on this cat and pull his tail.
Yeah, or did they raise it from a kitten and now it's like, here, you know, I got the kid and the cat are going for a walk, you know.
Have you seen any examples of them being, you know, it's notorious that they have issues with certain dogs and they'll attack them and kill them and all that kind of stuff. I've actually seen some examples of just the opposite, where it seems like they like certain dogs and they'll play with them.
Yeah, George's dog, you know, the George had inside dogs and one that they kept on a chain outside as guard dog up on the res, and a younger subject would, and I say younger, he's still 7 or 8 foot tall and he's kind of a reddish color, but that's younger subject. So, and he would often go hang out with the dog, and they would raid the dumpsters at the casino for the T-bone bones, and then he would bring those, you know, in the pork chop bones, and he would bring those to the dog and give them to him, throw them those. So there was always new bones in the yard from them. And then, but I mean, that family fed the Bigfoot family for years and years and years during hard times, and they're all Navajo. And so they're just a matter of fact with them. And then, like, they were playing out there, and George went out there, I guess, one morning, and the doghouse was upside down. And the dog was in the doghouse, but the doghouse was completely upside down. And so, you know, they mess with each other. And then George's sister had their electric Polaris hauling ass back in the arroyos. And there's no vegetation cover to speak of in that part of the country. And there's sparse cedar trees and stuff. But she was cruising back in this big canyon or ravine. And she had the dogs with her. They were running with her. And she actually ran right into the family unit, but only the reddish one was there at first, and it whistled through. She said it had she was right there with them, maybe 10 or 12 feet from them, and he stepped out behind a big tree and he whistled, and she said he had really flat teeth and he whistled through his teeth, and the dog went right up to him and rolled on the ground, and he bent down and petted on the dog and looked at her like almost trying to tell her, hey man, I'm cool with your dog, we're friends, you know, we're all happy. And she was frozen. She said she wanted to move her eyes and look away, but she couldn't. She said even her eyes were frozen. And then two other ones came out. One was the big female. It was considerably large. She's like the one we study a lot. So she's, you know, probably 9 or 10 or higher. And big black female. And that one, they stood out, and then she was still froze there. And then the reddish one actually made a move like he was going to approach the Polaris. And then she just hit it in reverse, and that's when she said she broke out of that fear. She freaked out and then hit it in reverse and took off. But, you know, I mean, obviously the dog and that reddish one have a great relationship, you know. So, and the other dogs, not so much. The ones that stay in the house at night, they took off. But the other dog was just like, hey, it's my buddy, you know. So.
I had a friend down there in the Navajo Nation that had 3 dogs that were all supposed to be guard dogs. And at one point, they would all bark when something was around the property. And then they kind of abruptly stopped doing that. And he'd go out in the morning to feed them, and they'd be off their chains. The chains would be tangled together, and the dogs would be out running loose. So he immediately figured out those damn traders had been bribed, and they're not going to bark anymore. So he got rid of 2 of the 3 of them and got some new dogs, and he kept 1 of the 3 of them. And now when there's something going on outside, all the other dogs will be barking except for the older one. It just sits there quietly.
Smart
It
one.
doesn't do anything. And the other ones will go take off and chase after whatever it is on the property and bark at it and stuff. And then they'll come back again. Hey, we did good. We barked at whatever it was and chased it off. And the older one's not making any noise at all. Guess who's getting bribed at night?
Right.
I already made friends with them. So what, you know, watching your channel, some of the things that I found interesting was that I remember a couple different videos where you were in like swampy areas tracking these guys around. One of them you were by yourself following is just immense prints. This really huge individual. A couple other ones you had people with you and whatnot.
All right.
Now it's filming.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that's a 4 foot 10 inch step. Yeah, trackway all the way through. This mud comes in and out. This is we have 4 foot. This is the next step. Foot sideways. Turn the foot around here. I can see almost toes and stuff here. So that's a print. 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 And right there's the heel print, where she put her heel down, not the front of the foot for some reason. So check this out, Bob. What can scoop a palm full of mud out and set it down without anything in between? Not a cow, none of that stuff. There's even marks here from a finger. So it was actually grabbed this direction, and you can see the finger marks in this, where it was dug out and put right there, probably as moving forward. And we're looking at depths on a single grab of 4 inches by 7. So this is probably representative of the hand width.
There's another hole right up there.
Yep, I see.
Yeah, I see that.
This could be from the feet. I don't know how that much mud would have come out of the hole, but I can sure see marks either from fingers or toes. Actually, you know what? Look at this.
Yeah,
I've never seen anything like this.
You see this big hole here? You see that divot there, 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 and
Yeah. Wow.
But what's interesting is they don't look like they're connected to the hole. See that?
Hand, quad, running quad. Would your hand leave up?
Running
mud
quad,
behind it?
yeah. It's pulling mud out of the ground for some reason. And look at this. I would say fingertips,
Mm-hmm.
if I had to guess, right? Just a lot bigger,
Yeah.
of course. But that's what it looks like. Why it's doing this, I have no clue, of course. But that's a lot bigger hand than I could make a mark with. And this is, again, a consistent, 7 inches wide. Right at 4 inches deep, or just under 4 inches deep again. So it's obviously a matching mark. Let me go ahead and try to document these with photos.
Wow. That's huge. It keeps going.
Yeah.
Boy, those are some deep holes.
Are you videoing?
too. Look at them all.
So these are the prints yesterday that we saw from the drone and verified here on the ground. And if I could steer your camera for a second, Bob. Thank you. So you can see there's Bob behind the camera. So as we go, this is where it came through over here, and give you a real quick run through real fast here. You see all this damage on the ground. Okay, so If we go into here, we're going to notice a couple of things in particular. Like this branch was up here on top, see? And it's down and over and down from something pushing that was bigger, pushing over and down to go through here. And then when we get in here a little deeper, we'll notice this small branch here and the break. What that is, if we move down, we can see where that break happens. This was in the way, and then something lifted it, broke the branch, and pinned it behind another branch, see? That's something that cattle or anything else aren't going to be pulling any of this like this off. Not breaking the upright. And then we look down here and we can see where we think that she went quadruped in here and pushing off the front of the feet a consistent 7-inch width to 8-inch width, and that is consistent with her 19 to 20-inch foot. And you can see here the devastation. Now we've walked all over this. I think a cow came through this morning, but even though we've tracked it up and walked on it, I'm sure you can already see the big prints coming up. What that does show you that the cattle that do make its way through here that don't go through that little tunnel, and then as well you can see what the size and scale of the disturbance is. I mean, right next to it, that's my footprint right next to this here, and you can see the comparison to the print right next to it. It's almost identical in form. You've got two divots here, so you got a back divot and a sand wedge. Here you got a back divot and a sand wedge. Then you have a four wedge where the sand ran back in, and we see the same thing. So we can see my foot here. We can get a comparison. My foot in the boot is right at 12 inches long in this boot. And as you can see, what happens is we leave a mark, well, 12 inches long. So if we go by what we can see in this formula, and we go to the front of the mark here and the rear of the mark, we're looking at 19 to 20 inches if we scale it off what we know. So obviously this isn't cattle or anything like that. And what happens is she came down here. You see these marks continue. Big ones in the sand here, and you can see that one angle's this way, one angle's that way, and she's getting traction up the sand here. And she actually stepped right here, and we can see, so there's been a cow again. Cow walked right through this, but she actually stepped here, and this was the top part of her foot before this got deeply pushed in. And this is the swamp location. One of the headwater springs here we can see is coming right out of there. And if you talk about thick, so this is actually where the water's coming from that makes the swamp here. Now reeds, you can see reeds, and when this greens up, this is just going to be a total reed deal. And this goes on around the corner for quite a ways. So anyway, we're going to try like crazy to find her prints. We've had to deal with cow prints and other things all mixed in the sand here. You can see how deep prints are as well. And I mean, when I push with the same amount of force, 150 pounds in, and I'm barely entering the sand there, and she's got that much surface area. So okay, and we'll cut this. Okay, so we found, on this travel corridor, we came out off the main trackway.
I found it amusing that, you're in the desert Southwest and yet somehow you're in a frickin' swamp, Robert. What the hell?
We've got
Not
everything.
surprised that they're there, but I mean, it's like, what is that? The only swamp down there? So of course they're living there.
No. Matter of fact, no, we've got a little bit of everything here. So we go from desert all the way to glacier. So, and everything in between. So we have there's a lot of little streams, tributaries, rivers, leaks, springs, and basically what you'd call riparian zones or oases or whatever. And yeah, there's a lot of swampland associated with because like where we're at now, a lot of this area is old sedimentary stuff, Triassic muds and stuff like that. So when you do have a water source, you know, you end up with mud basically, and then there you've got reeds and cattails, and then you got a swamp. Yeah. And so it's kind of like that. And but you know, we've got really, really wild zones. They change so dramatically in just 60 miles, which is one day's travel, real easy for a Bigfoot. You can literally go from a 4,500 foot elevation, rivers and cottonwood trees and all this other stuff, all the way up to 13,000 foot in the glacier, and in between that, you know, cover several different zones basically. So there's a lot of diversity. We're just chopped up. We've got everything.
Well, it's not surprising to find them in the lowland areas because you not only got the water source they need, but there's a big, rich ecosystem wherever that kind of stuff is going on. Yeah. So lots of food choices, plus more cover. Humans don't like to go wading around in swamps generally, so it's pretty safe for them to hide there because usually we're not dumb enough to go walking in there looking for
Well, and we generally see family units tucked in those type of places, and then but the big males we don't see hanging out often in those zones at all. So they'll spearhead into the family group and hang out for a little while, and then they bolt, and they'll stay gone for quite a long time. And when there's been a birth or something, they'll come down a lot more often. But what we've always seen is they stay into the taller, bigger, more rugged, higher alpine regions than anything else. So more sheltered areas, less people. But yeah, when you're talking, you know, extreme elderly, or you're talking infants and having kids and raising little family units, yeah, you can't. High forests aren't really contingent to that, and all these lowland riparian zones are, but they often aren't contingent to like a big male tromping his ass around through there. And so, you know, I think that they don't seem to hang out too much with the big males. When they get up and go, they just don't seem to hang out like that in those lowlands as often. I know it took us 4 years of, you know, and seeing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tracks of all the rest of the family group, at least all the ones that actually occupy in the main family unit stay together all the time. We'd see it for 4 years and saw hundreds of all their tracks, tracked them everywhere, saw everything they're doing and how they're doing it, and not once saw a sign of the big male, except where he had broke through some ice crossing a little stream. With 8 or 10 foot steps and left 5 big steps through it. But other than that, he didn't leave a mark. So he was coming in and out. But for one, he's so good and so stealthy and so aware of his presence and his marks, he doesn't leave any anywhere. And then, so because we know he'd been coming in and out because we record him with big audio coming in and vocalizing, and in and out every couple of weeks he'd come for a day or two. And so, but we'd track him from that, but wouldn't be able to find a sign. And then eventually we did, and that's when I ended up running into him the next day. And but like I said, we'd see everybody's sign, but not his. Like they just, and then there's a couple older, not older adults, older youth basically. So you're talking feet size to 15 to 18 inch, that don't, and I say over 15. So like the 14, 15 inch subjects where stay around with the family unit, then there seems to be a gap in there to where by the time they're like 16, 17 inches, they're already kind of away from the family unit some. And then, so those guys would come in too, and we'd see where they'd be in 2, 3, 4 times a week, but not necessarily staying with the family group. They come in and relocate where the group's at on the river bottoms, but they're staying, you know, a few miles away in the mountains and in the hills and stuff like that. So pretty interesting. Yeah.
Well, this is how we get information on them. Boots on the ground, butts in the field, do the research, observe, see what the hell's going on, draw conclusions based on the data set you're getting. Exactly. They call that scientific research.
Yeah. Well, if you're looking for truth, I don't want to come up and be the one to know something. I want to find the truth, even if it's not what I thought. You know, even if I don't like it, I get just as excited when with the facts dictate a truth and I'm wrong as I do when it dictates a truth and I'm correct. There's no difference in me. When we're wrong, because when you're wrong, you're not wrong until there's something definitive and you go, oh, I made a mistake, which means you just learned something for real, you know. So never ever let down. We're always just as excited to be wrong as right.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's challenging too. It's like, well, all the evidence is pointing in this direction, and I really hate that all the evidence is pointing in this direction. But all the evidence is pointing in this direction, so I got to go look at it.
Mhm.
Whether you like it or not, go
Yeah.
where the evidence is. That's real research.
Yeah.
Preconceived notions are fine, but if the evidence set doesn't back it up, you got something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's something like this, really, where you can start off others' information with which you form a preconception, or you can just go out there and see, and that
Yeah.
works better. I mean, that's
I
a lot
totally agree.
faster way to truth, but it takes a lot more effort. Of course, you're starting from scratch. So
Yeah. Well, and it's not saying you can't listen to what other people are telling you and stuff, and then, check their credentials. Are they getting lots of pictures and video of Sasquatch? They might actually know something about it.
right, right.
Either they're incredibly good Hollywood level hoaxers with a giant budget, or they're getting actual pictures and video and they know something about it.
Right.
Speaking of which, what would you rate as your scariest ever Sasquatch encounter?
Waking up the big male, even though it wasn't at night. I've had some really freaky stuff, but yeah, that was bad. So startling him awake because of the way he woke up. I don't know if he was actually asleep or not.
Oh my God!
But spooked him. So, but the way he exploded, over, his movement, the amount of mass that moved in the time that it moved,
It was like a tank charge.
It was like, you ever see like a big crocodile and you got a wildebeest and it's drinking water, and from nowhere the water just explodes and the crocodile has the wildebeest in its mouth, and it's like, it's so violent, fast, and you realize the mass and how big that thing really is. It's like that more. So if you take a small elephant and have it explode that fast, that's what so your brain can't comprehend that. And so it goes into kind of shutdown mode. And then, I mean, I thought I was pissing myself. I actually looked down to see if I was peeing because I thought I was pissing myself. And my legs were trying to run, and my upper body was cool. I had it all together, but my legs were saying, "Screw you!" They were trying to run, and so that one, and then I stayed in there for an hour and 45 minutes with real high fear load with him by myself. So. That collectively was the worst. I mean, but I had to face it. So, but still.
So let me get this straight. You were in there by yourself, and by in there you mean what? Where was he? In a thicket?
Yeah, we were when I went in there with him. Yeah. And
okay.
So
you didn't know he was in there. He might have been in there taking a nap or something.
Oh, I know. Well, I saw the big dark area under the first layer of leaves that came down. And it was 57 feet, so that's pretty close.
Yeah.
And so that whole dark area basically rolled over and lifted up behind the first layer of trees. So I could see him, but just as a dark shape behind that first sunlit layer of leaves coming down over him. But there's almost nothing behind him that's dark. You know what I mean? So
right.
When he exploded, I saw that whole form go over and go up. And then the amount of noise that it made, and the earth sound, not just the breaking, but the earth sound that it made as he did that. Collectively was where all that mass and everything, and then him rolling up like that, and then you're left with kind of a choice. And I could see the darkness in there, but I still couldn't really make it out because how bright the leaves and everything were. And I'm actually filming, right after that at that point, and then you hear him crash off, and I got to see, the legs and the shadow and everything from when he went sideways, bipedal, and even on all four and changed directions in there. And so I was about 40 feet from cover, and then one walked to my left that sounded maybe 200, 300 pounds, and it wasn't very big. But it got up right after that one ran, it got up and just walked. And on the video and stuff, you can hear it walking even. And I waited, and then I went in after that one just to kind of see if I get a glimpse of him. And he wasn't anything super thick. I could see about 30 feet. And so it wasn't super, super thick. And but he lost me. He ghosted me good. And then I went back around and went in where the big male was, and he never left. And he was so big that he couldn't go anywhere without making noise. And so,
well, that's kind of
just-
nice.
I mean, he was stuck, obviously stuck. He couldn't, I mean, he could have gone on upstream, but he would have had to make a tremendous amount of rocket, expose himself, and do a bunch of stuff. So he just stayed. And all he did was work around the back side of the thicket. As I came around, he just went around the other side and stayed in it. And then we just played cat and mouse like that for, like I said, an hour and 45 minutes. And every time when I went in there, I saw where he was and what he had busted. And then he had taken a right-hand turn. And when he did, he broke the ground out about maybe 6 inches deep, and then about 14 inches long, 15 inches long, and about 8 inches of kick to the side. But I couldn't, this ground's so hard, I'd kick it as hard as I can with my heel, I can't dent it. And he broke it out. And like a horse, we got horse tracks, cattle tracks through there all the time. And a cow, if you spook a cow in there, he might dig it out an inch and maybe scuff that dirt out, but it's hard pack. And this thing broke the ground and just shoved it sideways at like a 30-degree angle and broke it. And that, boy, I looked at that even on the video and I went, holy shit. And he left a good heel print right there, and it was about 6 inches across the heel.
Oh, God.
And then, so I knew he had turned at that point and gone out the back of the thicket, but there's a big dirt wall right behind it. And so he couldn't go very far. And so I went through there, and he had you go to the right and it opens up, the dirt wall gets farther behind the thicket. And on the left, it closes up. Dirt wall gets like 8 feet from the back of the thicket, and it turns. And it actually turns kind of around where I just came from, but on the back side. And so I knew he had made that right. I followed him through there, and then he had hung that left, and he went from quad to up, and he left 2 23-inch prints, real good ones. And then he dropped back down and went through this kind of a tunnel in the foliage along the dirt wall where it joins together. And so that's where he had turned. And I knew he was right. He was still there because I could hear him if he went anywhere, because we're within 30 to 40 feet of him now, and had been this time. And so I picking him up, and I'm hearing him move and stuff and doing what he's shuffling and doing what he's doing. And then he starts walking back and forth, and he breaks something probably 4 inches in diameter or thicker, a big hanger, and you hear wah, 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 cracking in the trees, and real big break. And I kind of have a feeling that was on purpose, and just real big and that close. When you're only 30 feet from a break that big, when you hear one on the other side of the mountain, it's one thing. You're like, wow. When it's like 30 feet from you, it's really bad. And then, but I couldn't see in there. I could only see in this stuff maybe 6 feet. So if you were wearing an orange vest at 12 feet, I couldn't see you. So at 6 feet, anything camouflage, I'm probably not going to see it. And so as I go back to that pinch point where he had gone in, and something moved toward the pinch point with me, and nothing does that. And I backed back out, and you heard it kind of clear that zone. And I went back in there again, and it goes to the pinch point again, like it's going to meet me at that pinch point. And I'm thinking, and it didn't quite sound as big as the big one, but I didn't know the other one was there with him. But that's how it ended up. The other one had come around and got in there with him. Is this one called George or whatever we call. And he's like 7 or 8 foot, and he's pretty good size. And I know him from other evidence, all from years, hundreds of pieces of it. So we figured out later that's who was with him by the prints. But yeah, every time I was going to that pinch point, George was ducking in there with me. And I mean, I would just get feet from me, 8 or 10 feet, but I could not make myself go around that corner. There's no way in hell. I tried to force myself to, and I couldn't do it. And because he was moving toward it, not away from it. And the only time anything does that is when it's going to grab whatever's coming through the hole, Yeah. So it's like nothing would ever meet you like that. It's going to be a good thing. And then, and I guess I didn't flash it was George either, because they've never acted that way. And, being with the big male, he was acting totally different than he had hundreds of times before, been around that group, friendly interaction, tossing little rocks and clicking their teeth and whistling and, playing ghost in me and stuff. And that's all fun. But this was totally different because I didn't feel total aggression from him, but it was a lot more boisterous and strategic and more gameplay than they usually do. And I mean game, I mean like big, like animal game, like I'm the game. And, but as it culminated and went through there, we went and did this back and forth a few times. I got really frustrated. So I just lifted my camera above the brush. And as my hand goes all the way up to full extension, you see the big male on the video raises up and looks at the camera. And he's probably 3 foot above my hand at full extension. He's probably 3 feet above that and looking at it and squinting. And then when I start to pull my hand down, he raises and turns and goes away, and he raises up another 2 feet. And that's really sketchy when you see that. It's like, oh my God, the size is really big. And so
Well,
anyway,
you said he had a 23-inch track. Yeah, I would imagine he'd be really big.
yeah, he's like 11 or 12 feet. And then so after that, I took my SLR camera and I tried to focus what I thought would be about the distance on a branch, and then I locked the focus and I just put it up and stuck and took a couple pictures. And I got George, got half his head looking out from behind a stump that's back there, and which is pretty cool. He's got real short reddish hair. He's real straight looking. He's got a blackish charcoal face. It's kind of mottled with, you know, lighter dotty things, and he's got a little human looking ear, and, you know, you can see him pretty good. He's got an eye and all that bullshit, but he's pretty cool looking, you know, roundy looking head. And but anyway, the big one grunted late, just a little while. That's why we ended the thing. Plus, it was starting to get late afternoon. I'd been in there by myself for a long time. I had been scared to death for a long damn time. And then I had sat down actually for like 30 minutes, about 100 feet from the back of the thicket, where I could still see if they were going to come out. And I texted and wrote some people and stuff. And then I went back over there and he grunted, and the grunt was real mean. You know, I've had enough. Yeah. And real low and real hard, and not an infra thump. I've been hit before, but not like it didn't. He didn't broadcast that, but he definitely was unhappy. So I thought, okay, we'll quit this, and I left. And I had to go back through where they had been and moving around to get out. And they didn't do anything at all. They didn't mess with me a bit. And I got out of there. And then the next day, though, we came back in, and the place where I had chose to set down, they had come out and just destroyed about a 12-foot circle.
Was really big. I mean, whatever's in here was the size of like a ball or something like that. Oh boy. And if you can see that, that's a big hominid print there. Real big. And I don't know if you could hear that, but the crashing was absolutely horrendous. Took me a minute to get here and get the camera on. So, I mean, whatever it was the size of a bull in weight. And it was in here, and I spooked it. And it didn't keep moving, it stopped. So, there's a massive heel print to a massive hominid print there. Really big. I gotta be right on top of them. Okay, God, I hope this is still recording. So, I'm gonna get 6 inches almost across the heel. You can see the huge flat spots in these leaves. These are feet print. Now, whatever I spooked has to still be in here somewhere. There's moisture right here. Something's wet. Look here. There's some big flat padding on the ground. I mean, whatever it was laying right here. And it got up and it took the hell off, and it didn't totally leave. Oh my gosh. See this here. It didn't leave. It kept busting through the brush, and the other one walked out. I can't believe anything this big can vanish like this. This thing should still be standing right here. if there's not a bull standing right here, and I'm not kidding, whatever it was is still in this mess. Well, I just heard something. Oh boy. This looks pretty interesting. Oh my gosh, look at this. 4-foot step gap, I think, at that point. Yeah, I got people calling me and shit here, so we'll get a couple pictures of this. I'm gonna leave this thing running because I don't know what the hell's about to happen. So crazy. And then we're going to go on in. I got to find them. They're not making any more noise. They're still in here somewhere. Or, you know, I don't know how anything in the world could have got away from me that quick. This is no bullshit. If you can hear that. But he just broke a massive piece of wood. I'd say he's 45 feet to 50 feet. I'm sure he can hear me. just heard is the subject who left those 23-inch long tracks. So my heart's about to come out of my chest.
Yeah, the little warning sign they give you. I had we were camping down by the Blackfoot River, and there was one of them that liked to come into camp and, like, oh, you humans probably have some extra food you're not using. I'll just take that. And it would open up the cooler and take the food out. And, when humans can't count, so if they have 4, I'll take 1. They won't notice it's missing.
Right.
So, so I got kind of tired of that because it was getting expensive. And I took the cooler and I put it underneath the rain fly on the tent. So you had to reach underneath the rain fly and then up again, pull the cooler up, and I'm right next to the cooler. So if anything's happening to the cooler, I wake up. Well, that's exactly what happened. Something was messing with the cooler. I wake up. Something's leaning against the tent. I roll over and punch it. Top of the lids drops. There's no or any noise. Whatever it was, step back silently from the tent, and that was the end of it. And I forgot about it and went back to sleep until the next morning when I got up and went to get out of my tent. And this is the only place within 100 feet there's bare ground, is in between the front flap of my tent and my chair. And that's about 1.5 feet of it. And guess what's right there? A 19-inch track with a toe about 1.5 inches from my tent. Like, don't smack whoever, girlfriend, daughter, whatever. Yeah, okay. Not smacking them again. Don't steal food out of my cooler next to my tent.
I love
I'm
it.
sleeping right next to it,
I love it. It's great.
So one of my other favorite moments on some of your videos that I've seen is where you got a rock winged at you. Do you still have the rock?
Yeah, we've got it somewhere. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I had it cut in half for the Navajo guy, my brother, Junebug. He's George's real brother, but I consider those guys my brothers. So Junebug was with me, and it actually striped his. He was lucky. He was raising up, or it would have caught him probably in the shoulder, and it would have busted his arm. And it went across his belly. He was wearing a sweatshirt, and it went across hard enough to leave a stripe on the sweatshirt and a stripe on his tummy. And it didn't hit him directly. It just grazed him, and then it hit me. And I was real lucky because it was, I think, 29, out that night. Probably lower by then. And but I didn't have my gloves on because I was running a camera, and I was crouched down, and I had gloves inside of my jacket pocket, which was, as I was crouched, like catcher style, and my gloves were right there in the fold between my leg and my stomach there. And so there was a large mass of jacket and gloves there, thank God.
Yeah,
and
luckily.
that rock hit that, and still Charlie horsed the shit out of me, man. It hurt me pretty good. So, but it sounds like it's coming into a catcher's mitt, and it's actually coming into a big fluffy jacket, with gloves and everything else, big heavy gloves and stuff in the pocket. But it probably came in 55, 60, maybe more, and it was rock probably 1.5 pounds. And so,
yeah, and you got this on video, and it's a good sized rock.
Yeah.
And my favorite part of it isn't that they threw a rock at you and hit you. That sucks. My favorite part is your reaction immediately thereafter, where you stand up and give them a lecture. Hey, knock it off. That isn't polite. That is very respectful. We wouldn't do that to you. And that's the moment where I went, I got to have this guy on my show.
Well, yeah. I told him if I threw it back, I know it hurt. So you want me to throw this back at you or not?
We've got one over here is being super quiet. He's only revealed himself once. We've got one over here that's a giant bastard who's walking and tapping on a tree to attract our attention. He did live 2 little whistles. We've got at least 2 individuals over to our far left. And they're walking. This is probably female and young or something, but they're just walking through. Each time they walk, this one tries to attract our attention by tapping on stuff. I'd say the closest one is probably 60 feet. The farthest one is probably 250 feet at the most. Not even that. 100 feet. Matter of fact, it sounds like it's coming out. Doesn't it? It's right on the edge of the road. Right on the edge of the road. Yep, it is. Let's go. Let's just kick it. it does come out, you go by me, I'll take the hit. Don't even sweat it. Did you throw that? What the fuck? Did you throw it? No, I caught it. Okay, this just got thrown at me, and it came across his stomach, and it fucking hit me in the leg right here. So, okay, they're throwing rocks that could kill us right now. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna throw this rock out on the ground. We're gonna retreat. I don't need to get in the head of the rock that side. It's too fucking big, guys. That is too fucking big. I hear you. We're good. No more. How about this? Don't throw no more rocks, dude. That could have fucking hurt me. I'm not here to hurt you. I'll throw it back. You get me? This rock will hurt you too. I understand that. So I ain't scared of you, Holmes. We're just showing you respect. Don't fuck around. But smooth. But smooth. Don't turn around. Do not turn around. I'm watching behind us. You watch that way. I'll watch this way. Okay, that's no bullshit. We just got tagged with a hell of a rock. And that was by the little kid. It was by a smaller one that's with that. That's a female. And it's like a little kid with the female. Looks like we might have had, I don't know, an adolescent with a big bastard. Big one tapping, adolescent shut his mouth. Little one just chucked a fucking rock at us. He came out into the road, into view, coming at us, and just hit us with the fucking rock. And the rock never even hit the ground, dude. I caught it. Okay. You all right? Did it just go? It just went right across here.
There's a line right there.
There's a line on this dude, man. And there's the rock that made the line. And I'm telling you, that fucker hit me right there. I'd like to hit me in the nuts. That fucking rock hurt, dude. I got a little, it hurts. My leg hurts. That fucker pelted my ass. Oh, that was good shit.
That's fucking cool.
Yeah, now I want to see everybody come out here with us one of these
I
days.
wouldn't have thrown it back because if you watch that too, when we back up, Eyeshine comes out. That one was 60-something feet when he threw the rock, 64 feet, I think, when he crawled out. And we were watching him. So the camera sees infrared, but we're watching it. We have a full moon, and we're watching all this happen on this white sand road in between all these dark masses of foliage. And then I had backlit sky and lit up, terrain from the full moon behind all the foliage, so I could see, and we could see all the silhouettes. And we saw that younger one. He was probably 7 foot or more. And it kept coming out. And, you see us during that video. It's at one point, Junebug reaches back and starts pulling his knife out. And if you watch real close, he's pulling his knife out. And my fingers touch the top of the knife and push it back into its sheath. And I tell him, don't even pull it out, dude.
That's an aggressive move.
All right. And then I told him, I don't know what the hell came over me. I told him, if it comes after us, you run, I'll take the hit. And I don't know what I said that for. And then, but anyway, so then it did come out and chuck that stupid rock. And then when we raise up, though, you see 3 sets of eyeshine come out when we rose up and started walking backwards. And one of them is only 8 or 9 feet from us. And it's about 8 feet off the ground. And then you see the one that threw the rock come up, and then one comes in from the left. So the one next to us, we caught his eyeshine too. There's a glimmer of it in the video. He's only about 8 or 9 feet from us, laying prone with us, laying face to face the whole time this is going on. So the big one, I'd gone in there by myself earlier, and I got infra-pounded and made me lose my lunch for a couple of days. And it was pretty bad. Got real disoriented, couldn't run my gear, had my thermal, didn't ever use it. And then and I went in and I was laying by myself and got to watch the big one, the one that infra thumped me, get up. And I was laying prone, crawling on my stomach, and got to watch him get up in front of me about 15 feet away and kind of slouch back and forth like this and move away from me. And he wasn't excited at all. He's like, he didn't even care. And but so while all this was going on with the one that threw the rock, and the rest of them were smaller subjects, and 8 or 9 foot, and anywhere from 7 to 9
How big
foot.
was the one that pitched the rock at you? Was he just a little juvie?
7 or 8 foot. Yeah.
So yeah, basically.
Yeah. So, because I mean, when he was on all fours, and I know he was crouched low because when we were watching him come up, he was really long and low. He wasn't up on it, like we do. He was he wasn't on his knees. He was on his feet and hands, and he was spread out.
Right.
And so but he was still tall. He's probably 3 foot at the shoulder doing that. And so when he hooks the rock at us, you can see the post that he's hooking it by it's a post next to the road there, and I think that post is 4 foot, and he comes out probably eye shine, probably 3 foot. One eye comes out on the side of the post and nails us. So that was a sidearm hit. That was like he's on all fours when he picked that one arm up and chucked that rock, and still was that fast and accurate with that rock.
Yeah.
So, and then of course me getting up and telling him that, and then that his like bigger brother or whoever that was. So Dad's like 100 feet away, clicking his teeth, and they're all doing that to each other to keep track of each other and stuff. They'll click their teeth, and you might hear it ever. It sounds like a lighter on a rock or on a pipe or whatever. You tap 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 tap. That's and they're clicking their teeth. Is what that is. So, but they were doing that to each other. But the big one wasn't. He's just like sitting at the base of some big tree 100 foot away. He didn't even do anything. He didn't care. He was just letting the kids mess us up, man. And if it would have gone to blows, of course we'd have just been dusted. But Dad was just going to let the boys just take care of these guys, or whatever. So, they weren't in a hurry to leave.
Kids.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the younger one was doing the bad stuff. The older brother was like enabling him. It's
Dad's
like
encouraging the juvenile delinquent behavior. If Mom was there, she wouldn't have put up with that. Hey, you're getting yourself in trouble there, Junior. Somebody's going to shoot you.
Yeah. And the 8 or 9 foot one's sitting there close enough to reach out and grab us. He could have grabbed Junebug real easy from that tree. But he's that close to us while the younger one's, I guess, looking for a rock to throw a rock at us. So it's like we're not allowed to go after the young. And that's what happened earlier is there was a big one I could tell, and there was a smaller one. And so I say on the video, okay, I'll go to where the smaller one, and boom, I get in for thump. And man, hit me like a roll of carpet. But it was right as soon as I turned my attention onto the smaller one, the bigger one nailed me. So it was always kind of like that, They let the little ones be ruckus, and then you're not allowed to bust them or do anything back. So you just got to take it.
Yeah, I guess that's part of the deal that goes with being a Bigfoot researcher. You got to put up with the pranks from the little ones.
Yeah, yeah. And then like Junebugs at their house, even the males there or the younger ones, they were throwing rocks at George the Junebug one night out in the back, and they were down in the arroyo by the cedar trees, and Junebug was up under because they're throwing rocks, so they got up under a cedar tree, and he threw a rock. It hit the tree, bounced down through the tree like a pachinko machine, and hit Junebug in the head. And the rock was still big enough that it laid Junebug's head open, and he had blood all pouring down his face and whatnot. So, and that's just play. That was total play. They weren't meaning to hurt him or anything. He just threw it at the tree that Junebug was under. But they play rough.
Well, and sometimes it can be accidental too. I know we want to say about how they're incredibly accurate, never miss. But here's an example. One of my friends and his girlfriend were out in an area looking around, and the Sasquatch there were not putting up with it. They wanted to leave. So they started making a ruckus, and then shake some trees in the background, and they're still not paying attention. Throw things at them, throw sticks at them. Now throw rocks at them. Now throw bigger rocks at them. Well, at this point, they were starting to get the hint. They're serious. They want us to leave. Let's go. Girlfriend turned while the rock was in the air, and it hit her and broke her shoulder blade.
Yeah.
And as soon as that happened, everything stopped. They quit making noise. They quit throwing anything. They let them leave. It was like they went, oh, shit, we hit one.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't mean to actually hit her, and they saw it did a bunch of damage, and it was like, oh, shit. And that was it. They didn't make any more noise, no more display, So very interesting.
Same thing as when a kid puts a baseball through the neighbor's window, and they all, blink and run.
Yeah, the shenanigans have gone overboard. We hurt one of the humans. Oh, damn it.
Yeah, we're out here. Yeah, Tommy broke the window. I'm going home. Tommy did. Yeah.
They're going to get mad. They might come back with their long-range weaponry.
Right.
They're notorious for that long-range weaponry thing. That's what the humans got. So what now you've told us your scariest encounter. What's your favorite Bigfoot encounter?
I never thought about it in the way of a favorite.
Sometimes the scariest one's a favorite, but a lot of people have like, distinction. Like, yeah, the scariest one wasn't my favorite, but this one was my favorite because blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah. Probably. Oh, I don't know. I've had a lot. I wouldn't know how to pick them. They're all special in their own way. There was one where I crawled in and it resulted in the worst video I've ever made and put out ever. And it's probably the highest viewed video I've ever had, and which still isn't that high because we're totally shadow banned, you know that. So, but
yeah, I resemble that remark.
That and it actually, the title of the video on YouTube is poor video is how it starts. So because I just didn't want to catch any more hell for it, but that was probably one of my favorites on that, and that's where I was checking where the family unit. So they mark foliage in a certain way based on where they're going to be, so the males can relocate them. I would assume that's why, and but they do mark it in a certain methodology, so you can tell exactly where they at each day, the family group, and then they'll hang out in this area and they move, even if it's just a little ways down, they'll remark again. They're real anal about it. So once you figure out how to track them that way, then you can not just find where they've been, but where they actively are, And so they're not together. They're not like 3 feet apart from each other or whatever. I've never really seen them doing that, even though we see it by the evidence when they defecate and when they crap and stuff like that, they'll all bunch up. But other than that, they're just like a little troop, occupying a small zone, maybe 150 feet across, or and they'll just be kind of scattered, in the foliage over that 150 foot. And then they keep track of each other, making little sounds and doing stupid stuff. So on that day I was alone and tracked to a spot where they had recently been marking that they've been occupying. And then I found breaks that were maybe 15 minutes old, just wow. Literally just minutes. Just and I thought, wow, they're in here like right now, not like 2 hours ago and now they're upriver a little bit. They're right here. So I went ahead and I filmed it and I crawled in there, and they didn't figure out I was in there until I got pretty amongst them, basically. So I never got probably closer than, I think, maybe 85, 90 feet from like the big female. I don't know how close I might have been to George or whatever, to the side of me, but at least in front of me. So when I got to where I could see her, and she skated sideways out of the frame. She just kind of moved herself. She was sitting on her ass, and she just kind of used her arms and just moved herself out of view. And you see that shifted. So I got that on phone video, but I was crawling in there and got her, and then and they stayed right there. And then they were just right around me. So they weren't away from me. They were all within 100 feet, real easy. And then they were moving around and started tossing little stuff. And then when they flanked me and started to get around kind of between me and the way I came in, then I moved back out about halfway to where I can still keep them 90 degrees to me from my exit. And right. Then, and so that was one of the cooler ones, only because, for one, I got right into them before they knew I was there. And then, two, once I got in there, they didn't have this crazy adverse reaction or anything. And, Mom didn't run off. She didn't do anything. She just moved out of view. And then the kids moved around and toyed with me for a good 30 minutes or something. And, that was really, really cool because, that's midday and,
right.
And
well,
close.
And Mom had a very, very high trust level for your behavior, apparently.
Well, there's people around that area so they actually see people quite frequently.
Right.
Not when you go way downriver, probably where I usually encounter them. They stay down where no one ever goes. And some of it's government land, Department of Energy. And so they keep that all cordoned off. And it's real, real rugged, real swampy, real bad down there. So no one ever gets in there. But they're often out of there. And people do go by some of these other areas with about 3 or 4 miles away. So it's not like, and then there's houses and stuff, maybe a mile outside to 2 miles outside the river bottom there are houses. So they see people. People don't see them, but they see people quite frequently. So I know that they're real tolerable to people's presence, but it's once they know I know they know I know they know, you know, so it's like he's looking at my poo from half an hour ago and they're watching me look at everything of theirs and then go crawl in there with them. Yeah, so that's probably one of my neater ones, I think, just because there was a lot of little whistling and clicking interaction, and I'm, you know, talking to video and they don't care. They're still making sounds and still trying to get my attention and, you know, stuff like
Right.
that.
I
So,
mean, that's super cool to be able to get that close to them and not have a really aggressive, hostile reaction.
We're going to shoot one more segment, and because I'm on this riverbank and it's a good example, these are places where they would access water without leaving prints. This held water very recently, within the last few days, and you can see a few of these all the way down the line here. The subjects travel mainly up on this bank behind the first set of foliage, and there's tunnels that lead off into here. And one of the ones that's here that we're going to follow, because it's heavily marked, and it's marked pretty recent with this damage here. You can see here where it's all been broken straight down, and several pieces there. And this is live Russian olive. That's about 6, 2, 3, and I went down, you know, half a mile of this section here that's all Russian olive, and there's nothing like that anywhere. That's all high damage. It's been broken down, and what it's doing is marking this tunnel here in the brush. And I'm going to talk because I don't want to. I mean, I don't mind, because I really don't want to flush anything in here by myself. This is family area, so this is Old Break earlier this year, though, marking, and it's also high damage down. But this one is probably in the last, I'd say 3-4 days, and this one's months ago. And we'll just go in here and take a look. I haven't been in here yet. You can see immediately how it opens out to these broad circular zones with really nothing in the floor, even though we're in real thick Russian olive, which drops material all the time. And this is pretty high passage. I'm walking with no problem. Pretty odd things on the floor here. Parts and pieces. It's not very common out here, not sitting in the middle on top of the trail. That's really odd. A lot of sticks on top in the trail. See, the cells were completely clean. Like, that's a forward cell next to the river. Here's another one right here. See, the ground in between is always littered with debris, sticks, thorns. Whenever you get into these cells, they're clean. There's nothing in here. I have something really big on my left. I'm going to move out to a little better position. I'm not game. But yeah, something real big to my left over there cruising through. Sounded biped, but it didn't sound super huge. I mean, like, not like these big 12-foot things. Mama and them that are 2,000 pounds probably or more. There's a whistle. Another footstep. Yeah, this sounds maybe, I don't know, 250 in weight. Sounds like a biped. Now I've got clicking. Tap, tap. Over to my right. So this is probably where the family's at right now. And I doubt very serious they're going to just pop out. If they do, it's probably going to be a bad thing. That click click was about, I'd say, 60 or 80 feet straight that way. The steps were over here. They came up and went ch 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 ch. Somewhere over here they kind of quit. And then two nice loud hard cracks over there. They were either two big teeth clicks or two rocks being clacked together. Wasn't a bird or anything. Hopefully the phone picked all this up. I don't have my Zoom with me, so I actually post this so people can see. I haven't been able to process any of my video. Somebody shooting in the background again. So as soon as we basically get to first water, or where first water's been within a couple days, there are still pockets up and down I can find. You can see how green and the moisture in here means the temperature is reduced in this bosque over here. But yeah, we find as soon as we get down to first water, just into it a little bit, then we find fresh tree damage right out here around this corner that we showed you, and then some other stuff saying they're in here, and then we just had obvious hominid running and then walking, and then we just had two rock clicks. So this is about, I've been in here about 3 hours or whatever. So I don't hear anything now. This ground doesn't take the print well, but if you look right there in front of that stick, there's a flat hominid impression. There's a flat hominid impression. There's a flat hominid impression. A couple of them are large, but they're not going out into the sand and down the riverbed. They just go out there and lean over and drink, and every once in a while defecate. We've seen a complete absence of scat, so now all that was about, 15 feet further, 20 feet further, when they started to react to my presence. So we'll just take that as a boundary. Let's see what it goes on here. I guess I'll probably stop this clip until something happens, so it's not so long. Although I am getting some little chatter sounds back in there. Guess let's go ahead and advance just a little bit. Famous last words. Okay, so we're gonna push in here a little bit. You can kind of see through to another clearing. Like I said, I can go down that way. Starts into this cell, starts on the clearing. And that way, this way has real fresh. Oops, that was loud. This way has real fresh damage here. You can see twisting this branch. This has already been trashed. Somebody twisted it out of their way and split it, see. And that's real fresh, that's not old. I don't see any hair. And it sounds like they have a bird in protest of my presence here as well. I don't know how long this camera will film for. There's a whistle. Straight up. That wasn't a bird. I know I had a walker right in there somewhere. You're not just going to walk through here and get up and see him. But pushing mama and kids isn't real wise. I'll try to give it a little respect. So you can see the ground in here still. Really clean. It's not as clear as when they actually live somewhere, because I guess they just keep cleaning it, but this is still, these cells are still relatively clean. Try to do is I guess just go on through here and see what happens while this is recording. Try to do is I guess just go on through here and see what happens while this is recording. Oh boy, we got big trees and big clearing up in here. Yeah, back in there, maybe. Oh no, I've got sound coming back around behind me now. That's not good. I don't know if you heard that, but it was a pretty good limb break. Now, what I don't want to do, that was messed up. Now that whistle's over there too. So they're coming over around behind me. So I'm going to reposition myself closer to where they have to expose themselves more. And I'll show you where I'm at now. So this is in the first open cell, an ambush cell basically, just off the riverbed. The entry holes you can see here. So we had first we had one run, get up, take a couple steps, then run through, take a few more slower steps. Then one clack twice over there. Then we had movement. We just had another tree break and branch movement over there. Then we had movement advance after we went in there. Then we had repositioning, a couple of big thuds on a run back in over here. Back in there. And then while I was still in there, we had more sound. I advanced a little more. And then I got sound all the way back over here between basically the riverbed and us. It's coming around, and that's not very far. That's only about 50, 60 feet from us in there. And you can even see here, just look, just go forward, look at this. This is high break damage, about 4 feet up right now, but it's broken down. Not forward or backward and down through the other branches. Cow can't do that or anything. If you look on the other side, we see a break laying here from right there and laid down. We see another break straight down here. So this is heavily marked as a corridor and recent. And if we look, let's see, here's a branch hanging. We look in here. Well, this one's still moist. This one's still moist, and it's 90 something degrees out here. So this is a fresh break. So this is today. By tomorrow, that'll be dry. So we've got fresh sign. We got it outside the doorway, in here, the whole 9 yards, all over the place. Fresh all breakdowns. Big corridor in, and then multi-cells, and then we got activity spread all the way around us in here. We know I'm going to move out because I'm not going to be able to see them, and it's only dangerous. And it just bugs the hell out of the family. I don't want to move. So plus once they start working around your backside, you really don't want to stand there. We're going to check the riverbed to see if something's running here. With this fresh break, you can see again up here. Head up here. It's good stuff. They said within a week, that's white still. That's last night. The other branch in there is today, this morning. Not that long before we've been here. And if you want to see, the whole point would be, these things don't leave much prints. All you're really going to see is something like this here. This is a heel scuffing. There's no real impression. Another little scuff. And they can walk off across this barefoot and almost leave a mark because this material.
Yeah,
That's
the family
cool.
group rarely ever have I got a real negative. I've got so close to the female we could hear her breathing, and you could she was actually emoting a little frustration. She was breathing like that. It wasn't a growl, but you could hear that she was emoting during her breathing, that she was very uncomfortable. We were so close. So we've got real close to her before, and we don't push that at that point. We don't push it at all, because you don't want to. I mean, worst case scenario, they're not going to find a piece of you. Period. So,
well, one of the more brilliant things I heard you say is that if you thought there were some undiscovered species of ape that were 10 feet tall, you wouldn't be out there in the woods with them. And you're absolutely right. I wouldn't either. I've gotten to the point now where I catch them on camera by accident more often than I get them on purpose because they're following me around all the time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, honestly, Robert, I think we're kind of running a little bit long here. We're going to have to probably wrap it up at this point. Where can people find all your good stuff? I know you're on YouTube. Give everybody your addresses so they can find your stuff.
Okay. No problem. Yeah. So you want to check CryderExploration.com. That's our website. And then we have YouTube. We are YouTube/Crider Exploration. And on Facebook, we have a Bigfoot site that's called KX space cryptid hominin research group NM Bigfoot. And that's primarily most of our own research. And then it's a few of our associates as well. I let them, post their stuff up in there, or if we see something that research wise is important. And then we have another for our kind of the gamut of what we do, mostly the ancient historical stuff, that is a Facebook page as well called Crider Exploration, and a group, Crider Exploration. And that's a KRYDER.
Right on, brother. Well, I seriously encourage everybody to get on over there and check out all of his stuff, because this guy is class A++ on everything that he does. Uses logical, critical thinking, does actual excellent research, and doesn't just sit there and look on the computer. Gets his butt out there in the field and vets things firsthand. Real researcher, real excellent. Go check it out. And I want to have you back on the show again and talk more about your main field of expertise, which is all this field research on the archaeology, the ancient history, and all that kind of stuff. And I think we might have to have you as the next guest on my recurring mini series, Conspiracy Corner, because I think you would have a lot to add to that whole conversation. So maybe next time we have you back, we won't be talking so much about the big fuzzy guys, but about all the other weird stuff that's going on.
Yeah, no, I'm game. Anything I can do to help spread the understanding that we've gained over the last 35 years of doing this. So
Right.
anything I can do. That's why we're here, is to just show the truth for whatever the hell it is and help other people get to that truth. And then I'd also like to do a shameless plug, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I also build and design equipment and gear, and we also field test and sell. And basically, we find products as well that will be suited for cryptozoology and things that are the highest quality for basically inexpensive price and stuff. And then, like I said, we also design and engineer our own equipment. And as far as I'm getting known for a parabolic setup that we put up that was on Expedition Bigfoot on TV, and I'm trying to get those in the hands of people too. So, take a look at not just our information, but as well the designs and the products we're putting together to help everybody else that's in the field.
Heavily encourage that. Everybody that I've heard from that's looked into it has said that your stuff is top of the line, cutting edge, excellent, and reasonably priced. So if you guys want some kick-ass Bigfoot equipment, definitely get a hold of Robert.
Yeah.
He'll be able to hook you up with it.
I was pretty stoked the other day. We got a report back from a great guy named One Feather up in the Pacific Northwest. I think actually he's in British Columbia up there. And he said that they were using the parabolic and heard a couple arguing clear enough they could tell what they were saying. And they tracked the sound out, drove and followed the sound, and it eventually took them off a road over there. And it was 5 miles from where they were originally listening. So being able to understand words at 5 miles, we were pretty proud.
There you go. This is what I'm saying. Top of the line stuff. Robert doesn't manufacture cheap crap. You get the good stuff from him. So go check it out. And again, he will be on the show again. And thanks for being on the show, brother. It's been an honor, a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to having you on again fairly soon, if possible.
All right. Well, my pleasure, Duke. I meant to do World Bigfoot Radio a lot earlier, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for staying up so late and doing the recording of me. I don't think you stay up as late as I do. You're looking tired. This is a midday for me. But at this point, I'm going to sign off with Robert. I'm going to stay on and talk to him for a couple more minutes. But for everybody else, don't forget the usual abjurations apply. Do not poke Dogman with a stick. Don't flip off the mountain giant. Don't punt the puck wedgie in. Whatever you do, do not hug the